Hello. Today I continue reading from Henry Kissinger's book, The Age of AI and Our Human Future. Let's see. Let's see where I left off. As a result of these pioneering philosophical explorations, the relationship between reason, faith, and reality grew increasingly uncertain. Into this breach stepped Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher and professor laboring in the East Prussian city of Königsberg. In 1781, Kant published his Critique of Pure Reason, a work that has inspired and perplexed readers ever since. A student of traditionalists and a correspondent with pure rationalists, Kant regretfully found himself agreeing with neither, instead seeking to bridge the gap between traditional claims and his era's newfound confidence in the power of the human mind. In his critique, Kant proposed that reason should take on anew the most difficult of all its tasks, namely that of self-knowledge. Reason, Kant argued, should be applied to understand its own limitations. According to Kant's account, human reason had the capacity to know reality deeply, albeit through an inevitably imperfect lens. Human cognition and experience filter structures and distorts all that we know, even when we attempt to reason purely by logic alone. Objective reality in the strictest sense, what Kant called the thing in itself, is ever present, but inherently beyond our direct knowledge. Kant posited a realm of noumena, or things as they are understood by pure thought, existing independent of experience or filtration through human concepts. However, Kant argued that because the human mind relies on conceptual thinking and lived experience, it could never achieve the degree of pure thought required to know this inner essence of things. At best, we might consider how our mind reflects such a realm. We may maintain beliefs about what lies beyond and within, but this does not constitute true knowledge of it. For the following 200 years, Kant's essential distinction between the thing in itself and the unavoidably filtered world we experience hardly seemed to matter. While the human mind might present an imperfect picture of reality, it was the only picture available. What the structures of the human mind barred from view would presumably be barred forever, or would inspire faith in consciousness of the infinite. Without any alternative mechanism for accessing reality, it seemed that humanity's blind spots would remain hidden. Whether human perception and reason ought to be the definitive measure of things, lacking an alternative for a time they became so. But AI is beginning to provide an alternative means of accessing and thus understanding reality. For generations after Kant, the quest to know the thing in itself took two forms: ever more precise observation of reality and ever more extensive cataloging of knowledge. vast new fields of phenomena seem knowable, capable of being discovered and catalogued through the application of reason. In turn, it was believed such comprehensive catalogues could unveil lessons and principles that could be applied to the most pressing scientific, economic, social, and political questions of the day. The most sweeping effort in this regard was the Encyclopédie, edited by the French philosopher Denis Diderot. In 28 volumes, 17 of articles, 11 of illustrations, 75,000 entries, and 18,000 pages, Diderot's Encyclopédie collected the diverse findings and observations of great thinkers in numerous disciplines, compiling their discoveries and deductions and linking the resulting facts and principles. Recognizing the fact that its attempt to catalog all realities phenomena in a unified book was itself a unique phenomenon, the encyclopedia included a self-referential entry on the word encyclopedia. In the political realm, of course, various reasoning minds serving various state interests were not as apt to reach the same conclusions. Prussia's Frederick the Great, a prototypical early Enlightenment statesman, correspondent with Voltaire, drilled troops to perfection and seized the province of Silesia with no warning or justification, other than that the acquisition was in Prussia's national interest. His rise occasioned maneuvers that led to the 7 Years' War, in a sense the First World War because it was fought on 3 continents. Likewise, the French Revolution, one of the most proudly rational political movements of the age, produced social upheavals and political violence on a scale unseen in Europe for centuries. By separating reason from tradition, the Enlightenment produced a new phenomenon. Armed reason, melted to popular passions, was reordering and raising social structures in the name of scientific conclusions about history's direction. Innovations made possible by the modern scientific method magnified weapons' destructive power and eventually ushered in the age of total war. Conflicts characterized by societal level mobilization and industrial level destruction. The Enlightenment applied reason both to try to define its problems and to try to solve them. To that end, Kant's essay Perpetual Peace posited with some skepticism that peace might be achievable through the application of agreed upon rules governing the relationships between independent states. Because such mutually set rules had not yet been established, at least in a form that monarchs could discern or were likely to follow, Kant proposed a secret article of perpetual peace, suggesting that states which are formed for war consult the maxims of the philosophers. The vision of a reasoned, negotiated, rule-bound international system has beckoned ever since, with philosophers and political scientists contributing but achieving only intermittent success. Moved by the political and social upheavals of modernity, thinkers grew more willing to question whether human perception ordered by human reason was the sole metric for making sense of reality. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Romanticism, which was a reaction to the Enlightenment, esteemed human feeling and imagination as true counterparts to reason. It elevated folk traditions, the experience of nature in a reimagined medieval epoch, as preferable to the mechanistic certainties of the modern age. In the meantime, reason in the form of advanced theoretical physics began to progress further toward Kant's thing in itself, with disorienting scientific and philosophical consequences. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, progress at the frontiers of physics began to reveal unexpected aspects of reality. The classical models of physics, whose foundations dated to the early Enlightenment, had posited a world explicable in terms of space, time, matter, and energy, whose properties were in each case absolute and consistent. As scientists sought a clearer explanation for the properties of light, however, they encountered results that this traditional understanding could not explain. The brilliant and iconoclastic theoretical physicist Albert Einstein solved many of these riddles through his pioneering work on quantum physics and his theories of special and general relativity. Yet in doing so, he revealed a picture of physical reality that appeared newly mysterious. Space and time were united as a single phenomenon in which individual perceptions were apparently not bound by the laws of classical physics. Developing a quantum mechanics to describe this substratum of physical reality, Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr challenged long-standing assumptions about the nature of knowledge. Heisenberg emphasized the impossibility of assessing both the position and momentum of a particle accurately and simultaneously. This uncertainty principle, as it came to be known, implied that a completely accurate picture of reality might not be available at any given time. Further, Heisenberg argued that physical reality did not have independent, inherent form, but was created by the process of observation. I believe that one can formulate the emergence of the classical path of a particle succinctly. The path comes into being only because we observe it. The question of whether reality had a single true objective form and whether human minds could access it had preoccupied philosophers since Plato. In works such as Physics and Philosophy, the Revolution in Modern Science, 1958, Heisenberg explored the interplay between the two disciplines and the mysteries that science was now beginning to penetrate. Or, in his own pioneering work, stressed that observations affected and ordered reality. In Bohr's telling, the scientific instrument itself, long assumed to be an objective, neutral tool for measuring reality, could never avoid having a physical interaction, however minuscule, with the object of its observation, making it a part of the phenomenon being studied and distorting attempts to describe it. The human mind was forced to choose among multiple complementary aspects of reality, which one it wanted to know accurately at a given moment. A full picture of objective reality, if it were available, could come only by combining impressions of complementary aspects of a phenomenon and accounting for the distortions inherent in each. These revolutionary ideas penetrated further toward the essence of things that Kant or his followers had thought possible. We are at the beginning of the inquiry into what additional levels of perception or comprehension AI may permit. Its application may allow scientists to fill in gaps in the human observer's ability to measure and perceive phenomena, or in the human or traditional computer's ability to process complementary data sets and identify patterns in them. The 20th century philosophical world, jarred by the disjunctions at the frontiers of science and by the First World War, began to chart new paths that diverged from traditional Enlightenment reason and instead embraced the ambiguity and relativity of perception. The Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, who eschewed the Academy for Life as a Gardener, and then a village school teacher, set aside the notion of a single essence of things identified by reason, the goal that philosophers since Plato had sought. Instead, Wittgenstein counseled that knowledge was to be found in generalizations about similarities across phenomena, which he termed family resemblances. And the result of this examination is we see a complicated network of similarities overlapping and crisscrossing, sometimes overall similarities, sometimes similarities of detail. A quest to define and catalog all things, each with its own sharply delineated boundaries, was mistaken, he held. Instead, one should seek to define this and similar things and achieve familiarity with the resulting concepts, even if they have blurred or indistinct edges. Later, in the late 20th century and the early 21st, this thinking informed theories of AI and machine learning. Such theories posited that AI's potential lay partly in its ability to scan large data sets to learn types and patterns, example, grouping of words often found together, or features most often present in an image when that image was of a cat, and then to make sense of reality by identifying networks of similarities and likenesses with what the AI already knew. Even if AI would never know something in the way a human mind could, an accumulation of matches with the patterns of reality could approximate and sometimes exceed the performance of human perception and reason. I'm going to stop here for now. Thanks for listening. Catch me in the next video.